If you're just a normal man who loves video games and entertainment, but are just tired of all this nonsense just being shoved right in over and over and over.
Imagine that you are young and playing an online deathmatch game for the first time with voice chat enabled. While you play the game, you become frustrated with a player who just obliterated you into digital chunks. You want to trash talk this guy for fun, just like that angry rant you saw on televised wrestling. So you call your opponent a jerk. The opposing player chuckles at your insulting comment, but not for long, so you decide to step it up and call him a fucking asshole. The comedic shock of the profanity catches the opposing player off guard, but only for the first few times that you say it. The other players have become so accustomed to hearing you spout this insult that the words have lost all meaning. So you decide to step it up with more colorful profanity. But all those profane words once highlighted by George Carlin are just not cutting it anymore. So you decide to use ableist slurs, and that works for a time. But then those words grow stale and you resort to homophobic slurs. And when that becomes common, you resort to racial slurs and Nazi slang. All of those words and phrases stop being offensive or hateful in this gaming environment. They are now just things gamers say. This type of language has come to be known in the gaming community as gaming words. The term is pretty much shorthand for identifying offensive language in video games. The use of the gamer word became an issue when the popular streamer PewDiePie famously used the N-word while playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. And although he apologized for this remark, he would end up using the slur again anyway while he was gaming. The racist words just naturally fell out of his mouth. He couldn't help it, that's just the way gamers talk. These are just gamer words. As video games became a larger industry, generating more profits, attracting more players, and garnering more media attention, it became beneficial to be more critical of the medium. This led to more voices critiquing video games in the same way as movies, television, books, and music. There was also more diverse representation, which expanded the audience. There were more rules introduced in online games and streaming platforms to make gaming more inviting and less of a hostile pit of excused harassment and slurs. Writing off all of that as gamer talk wasn't going to cut it anymore. And rather than seeing this growth as making the art form more culturally significant, many gamers disliked this paradigm shift. They were all like, what, rules in online video games? Why, that runs counter to the artwork of the folders I had in elementary school. A collective of white, straight, male gamers had grown too comfy with games looking a certain way, appealing to a certain demographic, and not being bound by the same cultural studies as the mediums that came before it. When they grew to be so accustomed to privilege, even the mildest amount of equality was perceived as oppression. This kicking and screaming against the paradigm shift led to Gamergate, a movement based on a since-disproven rumor about unethical game journalism. Gamergate radicalized gamers to take more interest in conservative and far-right politics and how they could be wielded in pop culture. They'd likely argue that they had no intention of being this political, but then a lady voiced some subjective opinions about video games, and another lady slept with a video game journalist for a good review despite being thoroughly debunked. And all of that was enough to turn a large swath of the gaming community towards the MAGA movement, adopting all of their hideous traits and ideas, even if they didn't fully understand them. One such gamer who favored this embarrassing route of abhorrent politics was Craig. Craig Skistimus, aka Stuttering Craig, was the co-founder of the gaming website ScrewAttack. Established in 2006, the website specialized in covering video games as well as hosting popular internet media centered around video games, such as The Angry Video Game Nerd and Death Battle. In 2016, Craig stepped away from ScrewAttack to establish a new gaming organization. Game Attack. Yeah, real original name there, Craig. But when that didn't pan out either, Craig left Game Attack in 2020 and started his own solo YouTube channel. The channel started as a podcast named after himself, but later changed to the Sidescrollers podcast. The podcast was initially framed to be about video games, where he would interview figures like James Rolfe and Tommy Tallarico, but the show quickly mutated into yet another right-wing, anti-woke broadcast, complete with the American flag behind the logo. logo. Craig wants to create the impression that he is a sane podcast host in a world gone mad. That much can be read from how he describes the podcast in the description for his YouTube channel.
Sidescrollers is designed to remove the giant stick out of the butt of the video game industry. This is a podcast for people who like to hang out, laugh, talk games, and most importantly have common sense. If you're a normal person who likes these things, you found your show.
Craig took this common sense approach one step further in his introduction video, calling it a podcast for normal men.
If you're just a normal man who loves video games and entertainment, but are just tired of all this nonsense just being shoved right in over and over again, you should probably subscribe to our channel.
And what nonsense is it that frustrates these very normal men who love video games and entertainment? The answer is whatever you want it to be. You're not wrong if you're angered by all these changes in media you don't fully understand. This is just common sense and normal. You are very normal. Don't you like how often Craig wants you to feel normal? He keeps saying it a lot, so you should feel very normal.
So hit the subscribe button right here and then go watch a video up here to get used to what we got going on over here and join the community of thousands of normal men just like yourself as we reclaim common sense in the video game and entertainment world.
Ah yes, Sidescrollers is only for normal people, which is why Craig features such normal guests as Razorfist, a YouTuber with a penchant for spouting profanity and hatred like this.
I'm gonna say it now.
No, we've been flagged. Congratulations.
Actually, let's say it like the Atari Jaguar. There we
Oh
are.
no, we're gonna get flagged.
Wow.
No, Razor, stop saying that so much.
To folks like Craig and Razorfist, there's nothing more normal than continuously spouting homophobic slurs, even when you know it's violating the rules on YouTube and endangers your channel. To this lot, that's not hateful language. They're just gamer words. Do you remember a time when you could say all those gamer words in your online games and nobody spoke up about it? Because Sidescrollers remembers. Do you remember the days when being called gay was the ultimate insult and gay people couldn't get married? Because Sidescrollers remembers. Don't you miss those days? Don't you want them back? Don't you want to make your video games and entertainment
Great again.
Now, with this limited scope of criticism for video games, Craig and his band of bozos have decided to stick their noses into film and television. And based on the previous clip I played, you can probably guess how they'd react to a film like Queens of the Dead. Okay, so I'm going to go through the Sidescrollers' reaction to the film's trailer, but I want to talk about the movie for a bit since most people watching this video probably haven't seen this movie. Queens of the Dead is a 2025 zombie comedy directed by Tina Romero, the daughter of the iconic zombie filmmaker George A. Romero. The film follows the familiar formula of a zombie outbreak in a city, but shifts the perspective to a collective of LGBTQ characters seeking safety in a warehouse nightclub. Zombie survival movies are usually most compelling for the characters trying to fight off the flesh-munching hordes. And there are some compelling characters in this film, each with their own drama that extends beyond who will survive the night. The mixture of characters that are drag queens, lesbians, transgender, and non-binary are presented in a thoughtful manner that the dark humor can ride that line between the absurd and the tragic. It's also just colorfully staged and features an exciting climax of zombie slaughtering amid a musical drag number. Now, not all the jokes are clever, and I do think a few scenes run a little too long on zombie cliches, but it's still a pretty fun horror film. But you can probably guess how the normal folks of the Sidescrollers podcast react to the trailer.
But do you see the trailer for the hot new movie on the way? Queens of the Dead, ladies?
Whee! Here comes the queers.
I just want to stress that Queens of the Dead was not a huge film, because even though it stars some notable names like Katie O'Brien and Margaret Cho, the film had a very limited release through IFC and Shudder. It played in a few theaters in late October of 2025 before streaming on Shudder a month later. All that is to say, this was not a movie worth noting if you're, say, a gamer who mostly just goes to the theater for mainstream movies. You would only know about Queens of the Dead if you were really big into horror and regularly followed the many productions that grace Shudder. Alternatively, you would also only know about the film if you were specifically seeking out queer media to gawk at. So Craig really went out of his way to just mock this movie. I mean, I guess it must have been a slow week. So they watch the rest of the trailer and they just make this mediocre transphobic joke.
That thing was not human. You know what this means.
It's worse.
It's Ellen Page.
Oh, damn.
After the trailer ends, we get some scolding from game reviewer Vera Dark about how director Tina Romero is tarnishing the legacy of her dad.
Imagine having your father's legacy to uphold. This name that you represent, and this is the dog shit you're releasing?
Okay, look, George Romero, yeah, he made some great zombie movies. You know, he made Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. However, many people seem to forget all the films that Romero made after those three. Okay, now don't get me wrong, there is some good stuff in the 1990s remake of Night of the Living Dead, and even 2005 Land of the Dead I kind of like in bits and pieces, but the films that followed after that with 2007's Diary of the Dead and 2009's Survival of the Dead were just bad. And I mean, let's not mince words here. George released some dog shit, which is fine. I mean, not every director has a perfect filmography. You don't need to hold him that highly in regard, especially if you're only doing it to shit on the work of his daughter. The rest of the panel's comments about the trailer are mostly just confusion. Like, they're confused about who Tina Romero is.
Just because George Romero, one of the pioneers in the horror film genre, had a daughter, I guess. By the way, that is a good question. Is Tina Romero actually a woman?
Is that the
I
main
don't know,
character?
They're confused about lesbians who don't dress femininely.
These days.
Katie M. O'Brien. Okay, but why does she look like a dude?
Okay, here's why. Because Tina Romero looks like a dude.
Yep.
That's why.
They're even confused about drag queens.
I thought that drag queens didn't really exist anymore because they all identified as whatever they wanted to identify as.
It's just confusion all the way down, the equivalent of watching kindergartners discuss a Terrence Malick movie. I must admit, I was just very disappointed with this video, and not just for the obvious bigotry that these types of folks are known for. I thought for sure this lot was going to try to argue that zombie films have lost their way, or that horror is going to be ruined by injecting queer characters into these types of films, but it's just queer bashing of the laziest variety. The type of bitching and moaning you'd hear from a family member at Thanksgiving who hasn't been to the movie theater in a decade but still has some very strong opinions about movies being too woke. Case in point, the panel argues that drag queens are no longer fun in movies, but that they did enjoy them in To Wong Fu, a comedy from 30 years ago. That film was funny to them, but now movies with drag queens are ruined because they apparently have more personal feelings in them. I'm not kidding, that's the actual argument they use.
One of the best examples in a movie for drag queens is To Wong Fu with Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like,
that would be seen as problematic.
I love that movie. And like, that's a great movie because the three of Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes, they don't look like women. They're so buff and muscular. And that's the point. That's what made it funny. So it's like, what happened to that? Why can't we just go back to everything just being funny and silly? Why do we have to take things so seriously? And you have to, inject your personal feelings and your sexuality into everything.
Now, I initially chose this video because I thought it would be different from the usual topics discussed by these types of people. I mean, here's a film that is more outside the mainstream. It's a smaller horror film that offers more representation in a medium that isn't co-opting any previously established characters or lore. The type of shit these folks usually complain about. And yet, all Craig and his conservative cohorts can do is watch the trailer and act all grossed out about lesbians, drag queens, and transgender characters. Not for anything that the characters do in the movie, just because these characters exist. And I think that video reveals just how limited the Sidescrollers podcast is in their media analysis. And this is just with the stuff outside the wheelhouse of the mainstream diet that they usually consume. So let's see what Craig thinks of movies he's more likely to see than just reacting to trailers for movies that he's never going to watch. And I'm sure he has something to say about the recent Superman movie in this video, The Truth About Superman Being Woke.
For the most part, the movie has been interesting to see the reception to it. Now, I have not seen it.
Okay, this is even lazier than I thought. He hasn't even watched the movie, and it's just going to parrot the dogshit takes from The Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic.
Now, a lot of people run to see what people like Critical Drinker has to say about it. And Nerdrotic, there's a lot of talk about, is it woke? Is it a woke Superman? Whatever.
Come on, Craig, don't just jump on trends. Why don't you actually talk about a movie you've seen? Maybe his podcast will actually talk about Gladiator 2. In this video, Hollywood's war on masculinity isn't stopping.
Did you see Gladiator 2, Cecil?
No.
Does anybody watch the movies they talk about on this podcast?
So I saw it recently on Amazon Prime.
Okay, at least Craig actually saw the movie. So let's hear an actual review and not just skimming trailers or social media reactions.
And let me just say this about that. It was long, it was drawn out, and it was unnecessary. Like, I didn't need to watch it. I was hoping that it'd be a lot better than it actually was. I'd heard it's like a 7. It's more like a 5.
Wow, that's actually a fairly good assessment. I mean, it was short, but it was direct without much hyperbole, and it did come off genuine. And honestly, given the anti-woke crowd that Craig associates with, this seems refreshingly earnest. So, yeah, kudos to Craig, I guess. Good review, Craig.
Right. It was totally unnecessary, and it was meant to generate money on it did. I guess it did pretty good. I don't know.
Oh, okay. He's still going. Okay. I think the cash grab argument is a little lazy, but, the review is still fine.
But the lead actor of it was this guy named Paul Mescal. Are you familiar with this guy?
Oh, no, Craig, don't.
The point is that the guy who plays Lucius in it was talking about, this is from That Park Places. He brags that Hollywood is moving away from the traditional alpha male characters that once defined it. This is at the Cannes Film Festival.
And it's ruined. He couldn't have just, talked about the specifics of the movie and how it made him feel. No, he has to talk about the perceptions of alpha males based on a response from Paul Mescal, an actor that he is not familiar with. Worth noting about this article is that even though Paul's words were covered by Variety, Craig chooses to get his news from That Park Place, a website that is just a cesspit of covering wokeness and entertainment. Just looking at the website makes that point seem obvious, but a quick peek at media bias reveals that they swing heavily right-wing and their factual reporting is mixed at best. So, after the panel watches the Paul Mescal clip, contributor Cecil gives the familiar whining that I've heard on this issue time and time again. That if Hollywood stops making alpha male movies, they're losing money.
Look at the women that are watching even something like Hallmark Channel movies.
Yeah.
The guys there are not, they're all rugged outdoor, they're working on the farm all day. They're not sensitive dudes. The vast majority of women do not want that. And if they want to try to make a movie where you're supposed to be a gladiator that has feelings, good luck to you. But, I'll see you in the bargain bin.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because, when I think of Ridley Scott's Gladiator, I think of the film's protagonist of Maximus as an unemotional man, not bound by feelings. When Maximus's wife and child were murdered, he didn't feel sad or cry with snot dribbling down his face. No, there were no feelings in that movie. And that's why Gladiator 2 was so bad, because now enslaved men who lost their loved ones to conflict and are estranged from their families have very strong feelings about those issues. So we then get some very tired takes on masculinity.
Well, I mean, just saying, like, this photo really says everything you need to know about Pedro Pascal. Pedro Pascal to me is not masculine, like, just from him as a person. Like, when I look at Sylvester Stallone, when I look at even The Rock, The Rock is, like, muscles don't necessarily make you masculine, but they help. They sure help, right?
And then Craig attempts to tap into his very limited knowledge of movies to give an example of how we should be laughing at beta males.
There's a reason why when you watch a movie like God, what's that? There was like this talking about sex teen comedies. What was the one with God, where they're, Jesus Christ, I'm blanking on the name of it.
Give me an actor.
The guy who pretends he's from Hawaii and he has the ID Superbad, right? Yeah, when you think like Superbad, right? The reason why that's funny is that all three of those guys are betas, right? They all want to be the alpha. They all want to hang out. So we are literally laughing at them. We're laughing at them. We're laughing with them in their situation. And that's what makes that movie so funny, right?
I would argue that what makes the teen boys of Superbad so hilarious is not that they are beta males, but because they are so obsessed with becoming alpha males. For the characters of Evan and Seth, they have a perceived idea of what it means to be a more dominant man. They want to have sex and believe they need to get booze to accomplish this. And while it is funny to watch their attempts at doing both blow up in their faces, you still care for these characters. Because Evan makes the right call by not having sex with a drunk Becca, and in a surprisingly progressive twist, Seth is denied sex from Jules as she feels that he is too drunk. The film ends with Evan and Seth parting on good terms, having been more honest about their male friendship. I didn't come away from that film feeling like I was laughing at beta males. The teenage guys have some surprising growth amid a teen film genre that typically favors lowbrow sexist humor where nobody really learns anything. Compared to films with similar scenarios like Porky's or 16 Candles, there was some surprising maturity in Superbad. But I wouldn't expect someone like Craig to take that much notice of a film like this. I mean, he could barely remember the title. But getting back on topic here, if masculinity really is under attack in Hollywood, what are we to do about it?
I don't know. It's tough to see Hollywood make this decision if it truly is the way they go. And ultimately, it's going to come down to indie filmmakers and or AI filmmakers to go in and create the products that they want to create. So
yeah, of course he supports AI filmmaking. I wouldn't expect anything less from a collective of ne'er-do-wells that wince at Pedro Pascal.
Just
no,
totally
there you go,
right there. Yeah.
What's he doing? Like, what are you doing, dude?
I don't know.
Now, I'm not a conservative-brained podcaster or the arbiter of masculinity, but I'm pretty sure what Pedro was doing in that clip was having fun. He is dancing around with a glow stick and doing any weird thing he can think of with it. And do you remember what fun was? Remember when you were so happy that you didn't give a shit what other people around you thought of your exuberance? Because that's what Pedro Pascal is experiencing right now. The dude has starred in a hit TV show and plenty of films ranging from Fantastic Four to The Materialists. And yet, the most scandalous dirt that dorks like the Sidescrollers podcast can come up with is stuff like licking a glow stick or coming out against transphobia because he has a sister who has transitioned. And just like, have you noticed outside the sphere of YouTube personalities that like, nobody cares about any of this? Disney did not fire Pedro Pascal over condemning J.K. Rowling's transphobia, and the summer movie audience did not retract their attention from Fantastic Four First Steps because of how Pedro handled a glow stick. None of that shit matters, unless you're like the losers on the Sidescrollers podcast. They want you to believe that Pedro Pascal doing all this woke stuff will drive audiences away and hurt his career, but it sure doesn't look like it, considering he's been doing this stuff for years with no considerable backlash. Like, sure, maybe he's making conservative dorks mad and driving that lot away by being too outspoken on progressive causes and, not being manly enough in presentation, but he seems to be doing just fine without catering to that crowd. He is having fun, and the folks on the Sidescrollers podcast just don't seem like they're having fun anymore. Everything sucks now, especially movies and TV shows, which is why they made this video, Your Favorite Movies and Shows Suck Now. The topic starts with watching an interview with actress Patricia Heaton, who said that some of the writers on Everybody Loves Raymond were too politically correct. Now, mind you, Patricia Heaton is an anti-abortion conservative who is not very smart with her words and could only find a platform to talk about this stuff with a conservative loser like Dave Rubin. So after the panel goes through all the classic hits of conservatives complaining about woke comedy,
this is the way that things should be People should not be hired based on the color of their skin or their gender or sexuality. They should be hired based on their merits. They should be hired based on their ability to do the job.
And it's like, okay, so you're watering down and filtering what makes comedy funny?
I kind of hope that the big secret to all this, the big reveal in the end, is that Hollywood has been using AI like producer bot.
Craig then chimes in with his own experience on comedy projects that had to go through committee.
I think when you have, and I can only go off my personal experience here, right? And I've told the story before, but when I sold my first company, Screw Attack, this was 2013, okay? And this is, the company that acquired us was a company called Fullscreen. Fullscreen then bought Rooster Teeth. Okay, Rooster Teeth went way down the woke rabbit hole, right?
Rooster Teeth, the company behind producing the animated series Red vs. Blue and Ruby, didn't exactly go down the woke rabbit hole as Craig claims, because several employees who worked for the company confessed that it was actually a pretty toxic environment of homophobic and transphobic abuse. The company had tried to improve its image after so many scandals by cutting ties with creeps like Vic Mignogna and restructuring its human resource department. So I wouldn't really call that going down the woke rabbit hole, unless of course that means, not putting up with abusive behavior anymore. Rooster Teeth used to be fun, but now I can't say my favorite slurs anymore.
After they bought Rooster Teeth, they said, hey, Screw Attack, you are now a part of Rooster Teeth. You are a brand under Rooster Teeth. So we went from this brand that had a very good pulse of our community, having knowing what our community is looking for. And more than anything, if we had an idea, we could execute on it like immediately. It's like the Jimmy Kimmel shirt yesterday, right? I was able to do that in the middle of the story and was able to execute that immediately. With Rooster Teeth, after we were paired up, we then had, for anything that we wanted to do, had to get a sign off. And I'm not kidding when I say this, from 7 people before we could create a new piece of merchandise, launch a new show, put together a pilot, anything like that. That's not including, let's just say we wanted to write something or have some sort of scripted show. All that would need to go through these people. And every single one of those people that I had to get a sign off from had no idea what our brand was or the audience that we were catering to, right? And that was extremely frustrating for me at the time. It's ultimately led, I've said this many times, working for Rooster Teeth was the worst 3 years of my professional career for that reason alone, because you have to go in and you have to get okays by people who have no idea what's funny or your audience or your brand.
Well, yeah, Craig, that's how working within a media company that has invested tons of money in a brand works. You don't just pull out a new piece of merchandise from your ass or immediately toss a new show into production when people's jobs are on the line. Because what if your latest idea for a shirt or show turns out to be very racist? And not even intentionally racist, like you just stumbled into it like Randall in Clerks 2. That misstep could harm the company's image and people could lose their jobs, even if you apologize and course correct. You might hate the red tape that comes with production pipelines, and there is a frustration that comes with artistic expression when it's filtered through committee, but sometimes the approval process is there for a reason. It's sometimes beneficial that if you make a product for a big company, someone take a look at it to say, nah, that looks kind of racist. I don't think we should do that. And based on your current brand of comedy, it's probably a good thing that your work was reviewed first.
Yeah, it's rough. And I think that what she's saying is pretty accurate here, and once again, Rooster Teeth now long dead because of that, red tape.
I might not have worked at Rooster Teeth, but from the outside, it sure seems like a bigger issue was the company's acquisition by Warner Brothers. Because Warner Brothers was already making tons of stupid decisions to cut costs from productions and, lay off workers. Now combine that with the revelations of a toxic work environment, and you have a perfect storm for a company to be shut down. I'd say that has more to do with Rooster Teeth shutting down than becoming infected with the wokeness.
Well, I remember when Rooster Teeth was, it was announced Warner Brothers Discovery was shutting down Rooster Teeth. There were so many activists that were going wild about their history of like workplace controversies. I don't like Rooster Teeth. I don't care about Rooster Teeth. Rooster Teeth fucking sucked by the end, but it was funny to see literally everybody turn against them.
Yeah, they those who preach, what's the old saying? Those who preach the loudest often have the most to hide.
Wait, so did Rooster Teeth go down the woke rabbit hole or not? Or did they only... Whatever, this is such a dumb argument. This whole discussion centers around how life was better when we weren't all so sensitive. In the minds of the Sidescrollers podcast, everything was better in the past. Nostalgia is the only comfort that adults will find in this world. This sentiment is stressed in their video, Life Used to Be Simpler, Better, Funnier. Here's proof. And what exactly is this proof? Well, it's a slideshow.
Avoided cracks. By the way, that still happens today.
Yeah.
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 It's like I did that the other day.
Pussies.
Blockbuster Friday.
Okay, do you guys remember the plushies from Blockbusters that they used to sell of like the mascots? One of them was a guinea pig, the other one was a rabbit. I still have those somewhere.
You should probably sell them for $7 on eBay.
Yeah, they're worthless. I guarantee you they're worthless.
Vera, did you ever go to Blockbusters on a Friday night?
Oh my. Okay, look, as someone who worked in a video store, I enjoyed those days, but watching movies wasn't simpler back then. It was expensive to buy DVDs. And although renting videos was cheaper, there was a high chance that the movie you wanted was out of stock. I do not miss the days of either not being able to watch the movie I wanted on Friday night or telling people we didn't have that movie in stock. There's a lot of stuff I miss from those video store days, but I don't miss the limitations of the inventory or the late fees.
Best movies ever?
Okay, I think this part of the slideshow is most interesting. Because, sure, looking back on the films from your childhood is always going to seem great. And don't get me wrong, there were some great films for kids back in the 1990s with the Disney Renaissance. But when you pull out from just the kids' movies, the 1990s had some pretty awful movies. I mean, yes, sure, there were some fantastic movies that marked huge shifts in filmmaking, from the special effects of Jurassic Park to the intoxicating dialogue of Pulp Fiction, but there was a greater volume of junk at the theater that dopes on the Sidescrollers podcast would likely complain about. There were plenty of mediocre movies based on TV shows, sequels for franchises that were clearly out of gas, some of the worst remakes ever made, and the animated films that weren't from Disney were usually weak imitations. The 1990s also had one of the worst comedies I've ever seen. Frozen Assets, a film about a bank executive who is somehow hired on as the president of a sperm bank. This film was so bad that even though it was released in theaters, it was never released on DVD, and it is not streaming on any platform. Like, this is the only way you can see it, on VHS. But just because you don't recall terrible films like the Jetsons movie, or dark events like the grim riots that followed the Rodney King trial, it doesn't mean they didn't exist. And after looking back on the entirety of movies from the 1990s, I'm not inclined to agree with this image stressing how we had better movies back in the day. But also, if you actually look at the image, the kids are not watching a movie from the 1990s. They're watching the Frosty the Snowman TV special from 1969. That image doesn't prove we had the best movies because that's not a movie from our time, you stupid fuck.
Our experiences are much different than yours, Vera. Right? What is nostalgic for you like that is for us?
Oh, I'm trying to think, because like Blabs would probably have nostalgia for like the Disney Renaissance movies when Disney wasn't actually political fucking slop.
Okay, well, hold on. What's that mean? What does that mean? The Disney Renaissance? Is
like
that...
the Cinderellas and Beauty and the Beasts, and then like when Warner Brothers was trying to compete with like Quest for Camelot and stuff, and then like we have Harry Potter, which is right around that time.
The Disney Renaissance has been recognized as the studio's animated film resurgence, beginning with 1989's The Little Mermaid and concluding with 1999's Tarzan. And it was the 2000s when Disney's grip on animation loosened, and it was no longer the gold standard guaranteed to be a hit at the box office or with audiences. So it's very strange that when discussing the Disney Renaissance, Vera here brings up Cinderellas? Okay, so the first Disney Cinderella animated movie came out in 1950, so I'm assuming she means the Cinderella sequels of the 2000s. That went straight to home video with lesser quality compared to Disney's theatrical animation. She also brings up Harry Potter for some reason, which makes no sense since it didn't feel like this 2001 film was trying to compete with any of the Disney animated productions of the 1990s. Like, I mean, is anybody on this panel going to correct her on this?
It's funny you mentioned like the Disney Renaissance, because I if I was to ask Meg what the Disney Renaissance is, she would give you an entirely different answer, which I bet I know what it is, but go ahead, fire away. When was the Disney Renaissance, Meg?
The Lion King, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Like
those
all
are
of
the
that.
same time frame, roughly. Yeah.
Yeah, roughly the same time period, despite some of the movies that she mentioned here being from a different decade that weren't part of the Disney Renaissance.
Okay, well, you led with Cinderella, so I was thinking you were thinking the live action remake from a decade ago.
What? No, of course not, Craig. What do you think I am, uncultured?
I don't. I'm just going off what you said, Vera. All right.
Craig is right to be confused because there was no Cinderella animated movie during the Disney Renaissance. At least Meg on this panel is a millennial who mildly corrects her. That said, she's still got some very thick rose-colored glasses glued onto her face.
To me, when we talk about entertainment-wise, I feel like it's an escape because today Hollywood is trying to make everything so literal, you know, injecting all these political views and social identity views into the entertainment that we consume. And so it sucks. We don't like it. So we're showing that by not paying for it, by not subscribing to it. And so what do we have left? Well, let's just go back to what we enjoyed when we were younger. And now we're seeing these reboots of all of these classic movies. And we're like, leave it alone. Let it live when it did. Let it lie where it lies. And let us enjoy it and have our thing. Don't try to recreate this thing.
Yeah, just leave all those franchises alone. I mean, we didn't have all these remakes and reboots back in my day that had to retool classic films into, something modern for the 1990s. Well, with the exception of Godzilla, Night of the Living Dead, Psycho, Miracle on 34th Street, Flubber, The Nutty Professor, Dr. Dolittle, The Beverly Hillbillies, The Brady Bunch, The Little Rascals, Lost in Space, The Addams Family, The Preacher's Wife, Cape Fear, The Jackal, Diabolique, Father of the Bride, Flipper, House on Haunted Hill, Mighty Joe Young, Love Affair, The Birdcage, The Parent Trap, The Talented Mr. Ripley, Sabrina, That Darn Cat, The Thomas Crown Affair, Village of the Damned, and City of Angels. But even if you're only looking at that era from the perspective of Disney productions, that studio was still making live-action remakes of their classic animated films back then as well, because y'all seem to have forgotten when Disney dug up The Jungle Book and 101 Dalmatians for their own live-action adaptations. But hey, to the credit of the 1990s, we did have original films like American Pie, which Meg then talks about.
I've recently just broke down American Pie. Blaz, did you ever watch it?
I did actually recently on Plus.
Yep.
The problem, they just recently showed, and you guys actually gave me the idea because they recently showed it to Gen Z and they were like, oh, so appalled by it. But the problem is it's entertainment. It's a fictional story. It's about boys that are horny and they can't keep it in their pants in high school. That's reality.
Yes.
And so why are we trying to make things
Let them know, Phoenix.
Yeah. Why are we trying to make things so literal? Stop trying to compare something that is entertainment. It's meant to be fictional, fantasy. And why are you trying to bring it into your world? Well, that would never happen. Cool. Yeah, you're right. It would never happen because it's a exaggerated storyline. Shut up. Enjoy it.
This is yet another lazy argument when discussing how a film has aged poorly, especially if you're showing it to a different generation. It's like arguing that you shouldn't be offended by the overtly hateful and racist depiction of black people in The Birth of a Nation. Why are you getting so mad at this film? It's fictional. It's entertainment. It's not like those were real black people. They're mostly just white people in blackface. It's a fantasy. Don't apply your modern sensibilities to it. Now, of course, American Pie is not that extreme, but some of the material in that film has aged poorly. One of the more concerning aspects is how Jim is persuaded to install a webcam so his friends can spy on Nadia undressing. So, filming her without her consent, made even worse when the scene progresses into her masturbating and Jim attempting to have sex with her. Now granted, this scheme blows up in Jim's face and makes his life worse, but it's more because of his inability in the bedroom and not for engaging in the act of voyeurism. Nadia isn't really given any agency in this film either. She's just treated as this mountain to conquer, and when Jim fails at that, she just leaves for Eastern Europe and never learns that she was filmed masturbating to all her horny classmates. Don't get me wrong, American Pie was definitely ahead of the curve in a few aspects of a teen sex romp, but it was also still severely dated, considering the whole recording of women undressing was previously done in Revenge of the Nerds. And yes, it is still creepy. This is not to say that you have to stop liking these movies. I mean, you can still like American Pie for the character growth it has and the less creepy raunchiness of Jim sticking his penis in a pie. But can we at the very least acknowledge that filming women undressing without their consent is not a good thing? Because that's not a fantasy. People do that in real life, and it can ruin lives on both sides of the webcam. The conversation then moves on to comedic actors and how we don't really have any of those anymore. Well, with the exception of some very questionable people.
A lot of those guys, they're now, you have moved from the mainstream Hollywood to, to TikTokers or YouTubers, right? Or live stream. Shane Gillis is good, right?
Yeah.
Andrew
Matt
Schultz.
Rife.
Yeah, Matt Rife, right. But this is a kind of an almost a renaissance of comedy. And this is only in the last couple years or so.
Okay, so here's a brief rundown on the comedic talents that Craig praises here. Shane Gillis was fired from Saturday Night Live and fell into the Joe Rogan camp of awful comedians. Andrew Schultz is a dipshit manosphere podcaster who voted for Trump and now deeply regrets it. And Matt Rife is a comedian known for telling jokes about domestic violence victims. So yeah, just a real shitty assortment of comedians here. And sure, they're not canceled. I mean, they still get work, but somehow I don't think everybody is talking about their work on shows like Tires or Burb Patrol. The poser pundits on this podcast think that they have to fall back on these comedians because we lost all the good ones. Because they used to like Jack Black. I mean, he used to be funny. But you know what ruined it? You know what made this crowd turn away from Jack Black? They found out that his politics were, get this, you're not going to believe this, it's going to blow your mind, but he was a liberal. And you just can't have liberal humor in your comedy. Matt Rife, he's making jokes about domestic abuse victims and refusing to apologize for it by doubling down with an ableist joke. And that's totally fine. But Jack Black apologizing for the punching down humor in Shallow Hal, well, that just ruins the comedian for everybody now, doesn't it?
The joke in Ace Ventura is that Einhorn is Finkel and Finkel is Einhorn. That's the joke. It's always right in front of you in these 90s comedies movie. But then today, all these kids, these Gen Z and sheeple people have to find the underlying meaning of it and why it's offensive. It's like, it's a joke. Chill out. Take a Xanax.
There is some big nostalgia gaslighting in how Meg recalls Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Because no, the joke is not just that Einhorn is Finkel. The joke is that every man wanted to have sex with Einhorn, and once they found out that she transitioned, they were disgusted with themselves. To find the joke humorous requires accepting the premise that it is okay to be disgusted by trans women. It's one of the most blatant displays of transphobia, especially for the scene where Ventura proves Einhorn was a man by stripping her down and showing off her penis. Once again, you can still like a movie like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective for the comedy that isn't transphobic, but refusing to acknowledge the stripping of a trans woman, exposing her penis, and vomiting over the revelation is not helpful if you want people to like your favorite poorly aged comedy from childhood. Because somehow I don't think Gen Z is going to accept the argument of saying, shut up, just enjoy this. Clearly, this lot really loves stuff from the past more than the present. So maybe these folks would appreciate a new TV show by older, more established creatives of nostalgic media that they love. So remember Bruce Timm? You know, he was the developer of the Batman animated series from the 1990s. Well, he made a new Batman show, Caped Crusader. Bruce Timm is a co-showrunner on this cartoon, working alongside James Tucker, who was an animator on Tiny Toon Adventures and Superman the Animated Series. The scripts were also written by notable comic book talents like Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka. And the show is pretty good. It retools Batman into more of a 1940s crime tale. The first season has this season-long arc about how Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, but the show isn't afraid to include more supernatural villains like a gentleman ghost. It presents many familiar Batman allies and foes in a refreshing way with some crisp animation. So I'm sure the folks at Sidescrollers will, you already know what they're going to say, don't you?
What are we doing?
So
Why are everybody fat? Bro,
Yeah.
it looks like garbage. And I'm like, and here's the thing. If you actually want to go back and do accurate period pieces, none of those women were that fat. Nobody had enough food to be that fat.
Ah yes, there were no fat women from the 1940s. To believe this point, however, please close your eyes and cover your ears while I showcase this photo of the overweight Academy Award-winning actress, Hattie McDaniel.
But
Like,
why
what are
did
we-
they change Harley? She doesn't have her accent. She's not, Mr. J, where you at? Like, we're not going to get any of that.
Because Amazon has a very specific checklist, and
Like,
they
did you
told
listen to
everybody.
her?
Amazon did not make this show. Caped Crusader was in development at Warner Brothers and was intended to release on HBO Max and Cartoon Network. But Warner Brothers screwed up their whole streaming platform, and the show's streaming rights were sold off to Amazon Prime Video. Amazon had no say in the production, considering that the show was already in production before being shopped to another streaming platform. And there's nothing much else to talk about in this video. They don't really discuss the show beyond just getting mad that it has lesbians who are not thin and how there's a gender swap version of the Penguin. Just basically complaining that this is not the exact same Batman show that Bruce Timm made in the 1990s.
Let me have one of the insiders take care of it. Keep it quiet.
No.
No.
She's in the
It's
big
too
black
late for
dudes.
quiet.
No.
Okay, so at this point, I was getting a little tired of this negativity and wanted to see just something positive. So I searched a little deeper through the videos and turned up this video where Craig and his panel talk about what the best movie ever is.
Logan from Red Bandana Gaming was on, and he said that Ninja Turtles, the 1989 Ninja Turtles, was the best movie ever made.
It's from 1990, but whatever. It's not like this podcast is good at recalling the past with much accuracy.
And anything that was made, Casablanca, The Rock, I don't know, pick your favorite, Shawshank Redemption, right? Pick whatever genre you want, whatever movie you want. It's beat by Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 1989.
What was his reason? What was the reason?
His
There has
reason
to be
was
something.
because it is.
Oh,
That was the
okay.
reason. Because
Oh.
it is.
Okay, so I hope you like that simple reasoning there, because the rest of the panel discusses their favorite movies without going into much detail about why.
I think that there's movies that I would say are close to perfect, but the problem is I don't think that there's one singular movie that is better than all of the others. I'd say what is pretty close to me is like Blade Runner. I think Blade Runner is what I would consider the closest thing to a perfect movie.
I don't know. I mean, it's all opinions too. I really love the remake of The Italian Job. It was like 2005 or whatever with Mark Wahlberg. I freaking love that movie. Like those type of heist movies that don't involve a lot of violence and blood, like are like my favorite.
Riveting reviews here on the Sidescrollers podcast. The rest of the video is just them reading off super chats of people voicing their favorite movies. Naturally, the panel doesn't have much to add to the conversation. They just agree with a lot of the mainstream movies being listed as good. Sometimes, however, they do get caught off guard with a film they don't recognize.
In Bruges is hilarious. Also, I love Usual Suspects, even though it kind of got memory hold because of Kevin Spacey and Shane Black. In Bruges. I don't know that one. Am I even saying that right?
I don't know.
It's pronounced In Bruges, and that film rocks. It's just a magnificent offbeat crime thriller from Martin McDonagh, and this was before he made The Banshees of Inisherin, which is another fantastic film. But within Bruges, you have Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and Ray Fiennes in darkly hilarious scenes of assassinations and shootouts that go awry with just some pitch black comedy involving suicides and murdered children. I would say I'm disappointed that nobody on this podcast has seen it, but that's kind of par for the course at this point. And like, I don't want to be a snob, but this podcast just never discusses much about what makes their favorite movie great beyond Blabs liking The Italian Job because it's bloodless and Vera liking Blade Runner because it's nearly perfect. And there's a lot you can talk about with Blade Runner and how it's great. I mean, you could talk about the elaborate production design, the moody atmosphere enhanced by the Vangelis score, or the existential questioning of life's purpose amid its commodification. But just saying Blade Runner is a near perfect movie is just a boring way to talk about it. All I've gotten from the Sidescrollers podcast was just laziness. When they talk about media they hate, it's just boring buzzwords they regurgitate from other right-wing commentators and outlets. And when they talk about the media they love, it's just as vapid with insight. And this is why I started the video by bringing up Gamergate. So many gamers, like the fools of the Sidescrollers podcast, bought into the movement, believing their games were under attack. They listened to the conservatives who whipped them up and delivered their marching orders for the culture wars. After watching a handful of these videos from Krusty Craig and the conservative cuckoos, I don't see gamers who are equally as insightful and passionate about movies as they are about games. They frame themselves as defenders of entertainment in general, but they're far out of their depth when it comes to talking about movies. But this is the culture war that they feel they must fight because of an assumption that their favorite media has been corrupted by politics.
Welcome to the Real Game Awards, baby.
And I've got the honor of presenting this year's Husbando of the Year Award.
53% of your vote, RoboCop Rogue City. Gosh, that's a shame. And just when we were about to enter Black Ops History Month,
gamers have turned to other outlets like YouTube and X to get their information in the gaming world. I don't know, I gotta be honest and say just how incredibly autistic she is with her deep dives.
Another award show. This one's called the Real Game Awards. I mean, come on. We're like the real Ghostbusters? Were there fake ones? I mean, that makes no fucking sense.
These are your nominees for Best Jiggle Physics.
I don't want to touch that with a 40-foot pole.
Some gamers like to pretend that video games were forever tarnished when politics got involved. But the politics were always there. My favorite video game of all time is Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. I absolutely love this game. The turn-based strategy game focuses on a group of humans who land on an alien planet and establish colonies based on their ideologies. The faction ideologies are all based on real philosophical beliefs. It ranges from the technological utopianism of the University of Planet to the free market capitalism of the Morganites to the Chinese legalism of the Human Hive. You don't just win by defeating all the factions. You can achieve victory by either being voted supreme leader by the Planetary Council or achieving a level of transcendence where humanity merges with the planet's hive organism. I've been playing Alpha Centauri since I was a teenager, way back when it came out in 1999, just long before I fully comprehended the intricacies of capitalism, socialism, and fascism that was present in the game. However, as I became more knowledgeable about philosophy and politics, I didn't feel as though I'd been indoctrinated with propaganda through the game I loved. I felt as though I'd been playing a game with so much thought placed into its assembly. It was a reflection not only of sci-fi inspiration, but also of the world we live in and of how our beliefs and thoughts can structure and alter society. The politics were not hidden in Alpha Centauri, considering there's a menu where you can literally choose which politics you want to embrace. Now, I'm not much of a gamer. I mean, I don't play as many games as most people do, but I do know that the ones I love tend to have more overt politics in their stories and gameplay that haven't tarnished their appeal, because a lot of people really do seem to love the games that I happen to fancy. My favorite adventure game is Disco Elysium, where the detective you play as can grow so much that they can embrace communism, if that's the route that you favor. One of the few first-person shooters that I've played in the past few years was RoboCop Rogue City, and I had a lot of fun with it. I initially played this game because I dug the original movie and how this game replicates all of its characters, setting, and satire, but it's also pretty fun that the story offers multiple paths that are very political. There is a plot point in this game where RoboCop literally engages with endorsing electoral politics. The Sidescrollers podcast would have you believe that the more vocal politics in art is an unwelcome ingredient of recent years, but it was always present. And rather than take note of how to better read what pop culture reflects about our world, these podcasters have refused to engage critically with the mediums they favor. Because this level of media literacy is, well, to them, it's normal. It's normal to make homophobic slurs about queer media.
The FAG wire. That's what you call it. Hey, it's the 90s. Different time. Just saying.
No, I'm saying,
A better
it's not a
time.
very...
It's normal to drug yourself on so much nostalgia that you can't coherently recall the past that you've painted so rosy.
What does that mean, the Disney Renaissance? Is
Like
that...
the Cinderellas.
It's normal to laugh at people with disabilities.
Who says he pulled up clips of people with Down syndrome on his podcast just so he could make fun of them. Very upset at this right here.
He just became my favorite casting choice.
It's normal to bitch about pronouns.
Fucking pronouns!
Did as ultimately win in this situation.
Yeah.
I think with the culture shift and everything, I think that's I think you're not wrong.
It's normal to want PBS defunded because Arthur had a gay character in it.
There have been critics cite examples like documentaries on reparations, discussions on white privilege, and LGBTQ themed content as evidence is biased here. So.
Like
and in
on
children's
Arthur.
shows.
Yeah, in Arthur.
In a
PBS
children's
Arthur.
show?
Mr. Ratburn was gay. He got married in an episode of Arthur.
And it's normal, to perpetually produce rage bait, where the movies you hate take precedence over the movies you love. Doing all this makes you a normal man. Doing all this makes you a normal man in Craig's eyes. You are not an obnoxious person filled with bigotry and toxic levels of nostalgia, complaining about wokeness. You're not an outsider whose dated desire for a world with slurs and closeted queer people is never going to become a reality. That's not you. You're the sane one. You're rational. You're normal. You're normal. Just keep saying it. Just keep saying it and it will be normal. Just keep saying that you're normal and all of this will be normal.
None of this is normal.
Okay, since Craig and his podcast seem to favor films from the 1990s, I'll meet him on that same ground by recommending a film from that era that challenges nostalgia. 1998's Pleasantville follows the teenage siblings of David and Jennifer as they become trapped in a 1950s sitcom. This black and white, simple suburban life that David favors is shaken when color enters the world. The color isn't meant to represent one progressive change, nor is it as simply spread as having sex. The spreading of the color represents a cultural shift across everything, from less restrictive expression in art to the dismantling of gender stereotypes. The town council, fearing this change to their status quo, tries to fight this changing of culture by burning books with too many ideas. But they ultimately fail. Pleasantville becomes colored, and the norms are broken. An entire town that once knew how everything in the world worked now has to grapple with a new age of art and sex that they don't fully comprehend. The final scene features the colorized citizens uncertain about what to do next in their lives. And while that uncertainty might be scary, it's also exciting for the possibilities just over the horizon. The messaging of Pleasantville is that the past is not as ideal as you think it was, either through your hazy memories of childhood or an exaggerated idealism conjured from past media before your time. It's why I wouldn't be opposed to a remake of Pleasantville, but in a more updated version that switches the idolized mid-20th century for the late 20th century. Because I'm already seeing young folk online form this retro obsession with the 1990s and 2000s, as though life was simpler back then, free of politics protruding into media. It wasn't. Most of us were just too busy playing video games to notice that we weren't living in a paradise. Our youth was not a Garden of Eden. So just eat the fucking apple already.
If you can discover a better way of life than office holding for your future rulers, a well-governed city becomes a possibility. For only in such a state will those rule who are truly rich, not in gold, but in the wealth that makes happiness, a good and wise life. Plato, The Republic, Data Links.
Turn complete.